Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome to the SBS webinar on county competitiveness. I will quickly take you through SBS at a glance, just giving you an overview and a sneak peek into what Strathmore Business School is and what it has to offer. The mission of Strathmore Business School is very clear: service to society through developing virtuous leaders by providing world-class executive education in a local setting. We're trying to bring you that world-class executive education that you would experience anywhere else right here within Nairobi, Kenya. Of course, for us to achieve the mission that is set by SBS, we try to gather experienced faculty, have a professional team, go through a learner-centered approach in our learning, unmatched experience. Once you come into the business school, you'll have some unmatched experience, and the learning ABS is something unique and something that you will never experience anywhere else, most especially in any institution around Nairobi. Of course, the quality, relevance, and virtue excellence is what we pursue on a daily basis as we go through a journey, as you go through your journey with us here at Strathmore Business School. Strathmore Business School is divided into mainly three. We can break it down into three departments: the Executive Education Department that deals with courses for executives like yourselves, academic programs that mainly deals with examinable courses from masters and PhDs, and then the research hubs that deals with research basically in things that matter, in trends that matter, both in the academic sphere and in industry practice. For the executive education, I'll just be very brief and give you an overview of what Strathmore Business School offers in the executive education arm, from leadership programs entailing from exco all the way to new managers. Across the whole organizational scope is covered in the leadership programs, corporate governance programs for those sitting in boards, those sharing boards, directors, coaching programs to handhold you as you go through your leadership experience, public policy executive programs for us, like this webinar is attuned towards the public policy space, healthcare programs, sustainability programs, data science, entrepreneurship, and of course the custom-made programs whereby we come about to just listen to you, understand the challenges you're facing in the organization, and we go ahead to implement and try and develop, tailor-make something together with you to ensure that you solve your organizational programs together with us as we draft solutions together. Of course, for the public policy programs, that basically entails majority of you are tuning in today. We offer public policy executive program that entails executives who are in public policy. If you come for a few days within the business school and we take you through public policy. Public-private partnerships, there's a lot of public-private partnership engagements that's taking place. For example, what has just happened with the recent visit of the president to France. So we take you through public-private partnerships through an executive program, ICT public policy, African Sustainability Executive Program, and Shared Value Executive Program. All these are within the business school, and feel free to reach out to me and the rest of the team and on any queries that you may have with regard to the public policies program space that we have within the Strathmore University Business School. A few housekeeping rules as we begin. The Q&A and chats are available for all attendees to engage with the panelists, to engage with us. If you have any questions, just post in the Q&A section right at the bottom of the Zoom link that you have joined. If you have any comments as well, you can comment at the chat section. We shall try as much as possible to respond to the questions that you have on the chat section. And at the end of the webinar, our moderator will be able to request you to join in and trigger the panelists with regards to the questions that you're asking on the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom link the Zoom screen that you have. The sessions will be well recorded, so they will be recorded and then it will be shared with you right after the webinar. So expect a recording of the webinar and so that you can touch base and refer to the content that is shared today in this broadcast. So I'd like in a special way to welcome you and thank you very much for tuning in and joining in. At this point, I'll hand over to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar from the Strathmore Business School. My name is Crispin Bokea, and I will be responsible for housekeeping in addition to moderation during this webinar. I'm joined by Professor Mudida, who will be moderating the second part of the session. And in today's webinar, we will be discussing what county governments are doing, as well as what they ought to do to improve productivity and competitiveness. In this regard, we are joined by an eminent panel of guest speakers who I will introduce as follows. We have His Excellency, the Governor of Kisuma, Professor Peter Nyong'o. We have the Governor of Lyquipia, Honorable Ndiritu Murithi. And we have High Excellency, the Governor of Kitui, Honorable Charity Ngilu, who will join us shortly. Now, in addition to these keynote speakers, we have a panel of discussants who will also try to discuss various issues related to enhancing county productivity and competitiveness. And these include Jane Kiringai, Dr. Jane Kiringai, who is the chair of the Commission for Revenue Allocation. Jane, welcome. And Dr. David Ndei, who is a public policy intellectual. So those are our 5 keynote speakers and guest speakers today, and who will enable us to tackle this very important topic. I would also like to flag a few housekeeping items that are useful in order for us to have a very productive session this afternoon. The first is with regard to the structure of today's webinar. Essentially, we will have 3 sessions in one. In the first part of the webinar, each governor will be given a maximum of 15 minutes to make a high-level presentation covering some of the things that are being done in the counties, and in particular the respective counties that they represent, towards improving productivity and competitiveness. Now, this session and the presentations by the governors will be closely followed by comments from the discussants, and each discussant will have a maximum of 10 minutes to make their comments. And that will pretty much cover the first part of our webinar today. In the second part, we intend to have a very interactive session. And this interactive session will cover issues arising from the presentations by both the governors and the discussants. And to some extent, we'll pick a couple of issues from the floor so that all those issues are integrated in the discussion. So we will try to make that second part as interactive as possible and as informative as possible. And then, of course, we'll have a very short and brief window at the end of the session, which will be a Q&A session. We'll capture some of the critical questions raised by the participants and flag them to the guest speakers to respond. Now, the last point I would like to emphasize is with regard to time. I encourage every presenter to keep within the allocated time kindly, and I will prompt you when you have run out of time, and I apologize in advance for that. But we try to keep within the allocated time as much as we can. We are looking at finishing the webinar inside 2 hours, not in excess of 2 hours, but inside 2 hours. So with everybody's cooperation, we should be able to really achieve our objective today. With those few remarks and comments, it's now my pleasure to invite Dr. George Njenga, the Executive Dean of Strathmore University Business School, to make his welcome remarks. Thank you, George. Karibu.
Thank you, Crispin. It's marvelous to see you all here. Let me start by saying thank you to you, Crispin, Dr. Angela Dunge, and all the team behind the scenes for setting up this very special beginning of the county competitiveness and growth and development in Kenya, both at the national and county level. So we will be holding this series of discussions aimed at a number of things. But before I go there, let me greet my excellencies, Governor Nyong'o, Governor Charity Ngilu, Governor Ndiritu Murithi. Let me greet my colleagues. You, Crispin, thank you very much for being there. In a very special way, Dr. Jane Kiringai. It's nice and marvelous to meet you again. My colleague, Dr. David D. So glad to be with you here. And Professor Mudida, who will come later. Let me say welcome to all of you. Why is this so important? I'll just take a second to explain this, a minute. We need to build inclusivity. We need to reach out to our populations. Can we create greater wealth for them, a happier society? What things should we take care of? We are also in the process of compiling data and information, and our Public Policy Resource Center is a thinking panel for information. So we are compiling all the data, and we've already started by getting all the data on business management organizations across the county level. We will be integrating more information. The second thing is to do research, practical research, for the sake of our leaders. And if we integrate that data and conversation that goes with it, we hope we will contribute to the development and the work of you, our dear excellencies, our dear governors. The last point is, obviously, we have to go across Africa. So we thought we must start at home. But at the end of the day, we must build a competitive country, a competitive people that will build Africa. And with that, let us go ahead and start discussing. Dear Moderator Crispin, thank you very much. You're muted, Crispin.
Yeah, so thank you very much, George. That pretty much completes our prelims. We now move to the substantive part of the webinar, and it's my privilege to invite Professor Honorable Peter Nyong'o to make his presentation. Prof, you're most welcome. Let's just hold on a little bit. I think I can see Prof is consulting there, but
Crispin, there's an emergency.
Yes.
So my assistant Caleb will read my speech, please, if you don't mind. I have to attend to an emergency, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead, Caleb.
Okay. Unfortunately, I've been asked to fill very big shoes, but I'll try to do my best. And what Professor had prepared was a few talking points, and this is basically based on 4 points. One are the preconditions for a competitive Kisuma County, and 2 is also based on what would be the competitive conditions within the county, and 3, what would the market look like so that the county can be able to move ahead, and 4, then what would be the key policies required to ensure competitiveness. So based on the framing of the county competitive webinar, what basically has Kisuma County done? And this has been based on the fact that efficient markets trigger competition through increased trade and efficient movement of capital and goods. And when this happens, then it shows that investors have confidence in that market. So what has Kisuma County done to do this, to ensure this within the county? It has formed a strong and cordial working relationship with the county assembly, leading to the enactment of policies that are investor-friendly to foster competition. So one of the key issues is, what is the partnership with the county assembly? 2, it has strengthened its legal department to ensure that legal and regulatory hurdles that impede investments and stifle competition are repealed or dealt with. For example, the county attorney's office handles and investigates all issues on ethics and integrity within the county promptly. That is issues to do with corruption or corrupt practices, where sometimes you find that investors are not really happy with. It has also partnered because the county is not an entity on its own. it has also partnered with county administration, that is the national government, and the security services to provide a stable environment for doing business. To this end, the governor and the county commissioner chair a multi-agency team that regularly reviews the security situation in the county. The result of this initiative has been a large number of business delegations have visited the county to explore investment opportunities. Indeed, one of the highlights of this partnership is the reasons why Kisumu County was chosen to host AfriCities in 2021, and from it exploit what kind of investments that this will lead to. The other front is on business regulations, and that is the domain that are the domain of the county. That is, these functions that have been transferred to the county. E-commerce has been initiated to enable starting a business effortless. Business permits and licensing have gone online and are being processed, what I would say, at the speed of thought, as fast as possible. There is a vision of online approval of development plans to make ease of doing business better and improve on turnaround times. But we are not just thinking about the big business people, we're also thinking about the small business people, the small scale farmers, for example. And the county has established village councils within a strategic orientation that enables small scale household farmers to obtain first-hand information on how to market the surplus produce without being exploited by middlemen. And that is one of the areas where the village councils will really help show up the incomes of small scale business farmers. This has positioned the county very well in the post-COVID-19 recovery program. Ours is built on how can these village farmers ensure that the sustainability that was there when other large industries shut down is what we shall build on to position Kisumu County as very competitive. What have been the comparative advantages for Kisumu County? One thing is, under the leadership of the governor, we have tried as much as possible to strictly adhere to laws and regulations that the county enacts. And this has formed the foundation of good governance. This has provided a very strong signal to the business community through the following policies: a strong resolve to deal decisively with corruption, the creation of a competent and even-handed administration within the county government, ensuring that all investors are treated equally in terms of economic regulation. And then we've tried to focus on areas where we have comparative advantage, that is in tourism, leisure, and sports. So to help the county government implement the above policies effectively, we've also had some institutionals established. One, which has been very instrumental, is the Kisumu Economic and Social Council, KECOSOC. This is primarily a think tank and resource mobilization institution working with global and local investors to position Kisumu County as a go-to county for growth and opportunity in its achievements. And some of its achievements have been, one, especially in the COVID era, it has mobilized non-state actors comprising mainly of farm families to drive the self-sufficiency agenda in the post-COVID period. This is premised on lessons learned from the COVID-19 crisis, which fundamentally saw a complete shutdown of major industries, leaving small-scale industries as the only mode of sustenance. The county will use this non-state actor platform of small-scale farmers in a partnership with village councils to drive the county's recovery and development agenda. KECOSOC, at the same time, is still going to ensure that the partnership with farm families and the policy shift to self-sustainability through agricultural value chains, and they've identified cotton-based products as one of the areas that can revive the manufacturing sector in Kisumu County. To this end, an MOU has been developed to revive the subsector, and products are going to be produced through the cotton value chain for the COMESA and continental markets with global accreditation in terms of quality. So medical products will be the focus. That is cotton and meditech products, PPEs, swabs, basically what cotton is used in the medical industry. KECOSOC has been instrumental in identifying key assets of the county using its strategic geopositioning within the East and Central African region. It has held discussions with a number of key investors on how to turn the county's assets into resources. This means identifying markets for these assets, ensuring that products made in Kisumu County are competitive in those markets, and breaking ground so that we don't waste a lot of time having discussions. Proposals have also been received and reviewed on developing the lakefront, establishing a solar farm, and a world-class sports stadium to exploit some of the advantages that Kisumu County has. We also have a business incubation center, fundamentally to tap into our young generation so that their innovations find angel investors or investors who can support them and are then taken to the market and commercialized in ways that can help them. We are also, Kisumu County is also an integral member of the Lake Region Economic Bloc, a coming together 14 counties in the country. This is the largest economic bloc and has enhanced inter-county integration. With its vision to develop a number of value chains in agriculture, cotton and rice, I think that one is one that Kisuma is exploiting. Port infrastructure, that is to take advantage of the regional economies and the wider East Africa, tourism and recreational facilities. The county believes that the prime mover for integration will be manufacturing, however small, for export both within Kenya, among the counties and beyond. This will enable the county to do the following and lead the park in competition. One, increase its share of manufacturing, thus generating employment, enhancing its own resource, its own source revenue. To generate incomes for the employed where the rewards for labor lead to quality lives and tackles inequalities in the county. Enhance the rule of law, thus making the county more attractive to investors and capturing the benefits of integration. Enable the county invest more in health and education sectors, thus enhancing the level of skills found in the county and its well-being. And finally, embrace and integrate e-commerce as part of its policy decision within its commitment to ensure that growth is sustainable. We also have, within this framework of the Lake Region Economic Bloc, a special economic zone, which is being developed as one area where companies will be expected to come and locate and manufacture for the larger Lake Region Economic Bloc and East African markets. What have been the challenges? The challenges have mainly been this issue about depending still on the national government, especially issues around revenue allocation, which has taken quite some time, which takes quite some time to reach the counties, and this makes service delivery rather hard. Some of the issues that investors look forward to is efficient delivery of those services within a certain period of time. But that notwithstanding, other challenges emanate from, for example, the political cycle that is about to set in, and how this will affect competition, and how investors will react to the fact that we're now heading towards an election period. Investors are normally known during the election cycle to hold back until they see some stability within the election, within the framework, and find whether they'll be able to make some money. So I do believe that these frameworks have created the kind of competitive conditions that the county can look forward to in making sure that it's at the front line of competition. Other issues are, for example, they're working on affordable credit, especially for SMEs. They're also working on reliable infrastructure services like electricity, telecommunications, and transport. We've really improved on our transport environment to see to it that impediments to transportation are not there. They're also trying to look at transaction costs like business permits, levies, and fees that are being enacted by the county. Do these make us competitive, or does it make the cost of being business in the county much more expensive? Then they also look at a stable industrial framework devoid of strikes and constant stoppages from labor conflicts within. Finally, they also look at litigation. Does it take a long time within our law courts to resolve business conflicts? How long does it take, for example, for arbitration or the resolution of these conflicts to be resolved? Then within the market itself, the county is trying to balance between competition, which allows the private sector to self-regulate, and the state interventions in the public sector. Then we also look at the participation of each and everyone towards this process. We are a very friendly county in terms of what do investors want? in order to be able to produce competitively in this market. Then we also have within this framework then a competition policy and a regulatory regime that effectively aligns both the profit motive and public interest. So finally, the key policies driving this is competition policy within the county. The regulatory framework, how does this work to drive the competition policy? Then pricing structures, which of course is market driven, especially in the areas of loans, which sometimes can be very exploitative, and there's a lot of information asymmetry there. Electricity, which still is a large monopoly and with its own inefficiencies. Telecommunications and the energy markets. How will this price the competitiveness within Kisumu County? That is basically what I have, sir. It's unfortunate that the governor has got to attend to something else and I didn't get to introduce myself, but I think if David Lee is there, I think I'd say hello to him. I've worked with him before in the ERS. Thank you, sir.
Caleb, I think the governor introduced you. Thank you for ably delivering the governor's presentation. We hope that the governor will find time to join us during the interactive session.
Yes.
Note, of course, we will also expect you to join us at that point in time. Now, you've basically completed your presentation inside time, inside the 15 minutes. So thank you very much for that. And without further discussion, I would like to invite the next governor, Governor Nderitu Murithi of Lyquipia, to make his presentation. Governor Nderitu, please, you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Crispin. And good afternoon to all the other guests. I have 3 or 4 slides, so I think I'll be able to do it inside the time limit. So first up, on the strategic initiatives that we are taking to enhance competitiveness, I have a number of points there. The first thing is that as a county, we have a fairly formal enterprise development program, which at the moment is working with 457 SMEs. Now, this program involves more than 200 staff, and its aim is to support businesses, primarily in manufacturing, in engineering related. In manufacturing, for example, agro-processing, these will be SMEs working on grain milling, working on beauty and related, working on garment making and so on. In engineering, we are talking about metal fabricators, people putting together mobile phones. And as you know, we have an entity making tuk-tuks. This program is supported by 29 different partners, including universities, institutions like ISPAC and Agiri. And as I said, the whole point is to support businesses to be able to be competitive, both in Lyquipia and more broadly. Secondly, and you will see why in a moment, we have a big focus, strategic focus on increasing the area under irrigated agriculture. And you may have seen reportage on water programs like Solu Water that is delivering water to about 2,000 households, enabling them to not only have water for domestic purposes, but much more importantly, to be able to use it to irrigate. And we have a couple of other models related to small water pans where dozens or hundreds of farmers around a water pan are able to irrigate using it and be able to accumulate a tariff so that the maintenance of the PANs is organized for. Thirdly, my government has been providing common manufacturing facilities and workspaces for small business. So if you go to Nyahururu, if you go to Oldabet, Nanyuki, Rumuruti, and so on. And so we provide space, but we also provide machines and equipment, things like lathe machines that small businesses might not be able to buy for themselves. Fourth, strategic initiative is around growing the number of SMEs that are licensed, because what you will tend to find, the productivity of licensed SMEs is much higher than, say, the sort of itinerant, micros who sell on the roadside. So, for instance, in the year 2018, 2019, we brought on fold an additional 6,000 micros and small businesses that then became licensed. Our fifth initiative at a strategic level is to grow technical skills that are available to these SMEs to use. And again, if you look at the last couple of years, we have increased the number of people getting technical skills 4 times. To the second question of what is our comparative advantage and what is our understanding of it, and I'm glad David is on this webinar, because one of our initiatives along those lines involved him and a couple of other colleagues with some deep analysis. So our comparative advantage and our understanding of it, I'll just talk to 4 points there. I think point 1 is that Lyquipia is in the middle of the country, and it makes us a natural logistics hub, particularly for areas of northern Kenya and all the way to South Ethiopia. So if you look at our 2 key towns, if you start on the western side, Nyahururu, if you're trying to go to Samburu, to Lake Turkana, as well as to many parts of Baringo, that is your natural way of moving from Nairobi and southern Kenya into those areas. If you look at Nanyuki, again, if you're trying to go to Marsabit County, to southern Ethiopia and to Mandera, your route is through Nanyuki. So that Nanyuki and Lyquipia in general is a natural hub for logistics. And I think that's why you have seen the revival of the old meter gauge railway to Nanyuki. Our second competitive advantage is about size, because agriculture is a big thing for us. And we have about 9,000 hectares, most of which is, in fact, all of which can be put under useful agriculture. So what you will see is that agricultural annual growth is in a neighborhood of 16%, although it's sometimes quite, it has a lot of variability. But on the whole, if you look at the last 5 years, we have been growing agriculture at approximately 16%. In fact, this is what has made us the second or third fastest growing county in the Republic. The other thing that I would say is an advantage to us is that the way our growth is, it's both the result of increases in labor force, but it's also the result of increases in productivity, particularly because of irrigated agriculture. You asked the question, what are we doing to be able to understand our competitive advantage? And one of the things certainly that sets us apart is an aggressive program of data collection as well as publishing. So every year we publish the Lyquipia County Statistical Abstract. And this year we were fortunate to have Dr. Kirengai and her colleagues come out to launch this book, just about a month ago. Now, what this, of course, allows us to do is to be able to give you evidence, any player, so that you can also judge for yourself which way this economy is going. And the statistical abstract will give you data, everything from the population. It will give you data, economic activity by sector. It will give you governance data and so on. And of course, as I've already pointed out, what you will see is that this economy has been growing in between 8 and 9% in the last period or so. Between, for example, 2013 and 2017, we averaged annual growth of 6.8%, which is nearly double the national average. And agriculture, as I've already pointed out, contributing as much as 40% of this growth. One opportunity that, and I'll come back to later, is that as many as 65 to 70%, 70,000 of people who are active in the labor force would be characterized as underemployed and therefore available for increases in productivity, either because of better agriculture, but more likely because of growing small and medium-sized businesses. And as I've already pointed out, you asked, what are we doing to improve our understanding of competitive advantage? I mean, it's just really one point, which is deeper and deeper analysis, looking at what are the sources of growth, looking at what are the sources of our competitive advantage. Now, your third question about key challenges, but frankly, I rather see them as opportunities myself. So if you look at my slides, it talks about opportunity. I just think that in Kenya, I don't know who taught us this business of challenges every time. And anything that you look at, frankly, contains a wonderful opportunity. So my answer to that question is one big opportunity is as Professor Nyang said, economic blocks. Now, if you look at the central economic bloc that my county belongs to, this is an economy of $27 billion. And that is bigger than, likely 34 or 35 African countries. If you look at it as an economy, it is the fourth largest economy in East Africa. So that long before you go to Botswana or Zambia or Rwanda to set up a factory, here is a reasonably homogeneous region with reasonable logistics that obviously require improvement, but with reasonable logistics and a reasonable workforce. And I think that this is a major opportunity for us in this county. And I think myself that $27 billion begins to provide a reasonable base with which to grow manufacturing and so on, as well as a reasonable service sector. What we do to leverage, I think it is for these economic blocks to move beyond the rhetoric and, sort of high profile or well-covered meetings by media into some practical things, ensuring that the goods produced within these economic blocks find good markets within those blocks. As I move towards my last slide, you asked the question, what are the post-COVID opportunities that we see? Certainly for Lyquipia, we see manufacturing as a natural opportunity building on what has happened with COVID. As you know, our ventilator that we put together with Dedan Kimathi University is now at clinical trials. So we expect to be able to move into sort of manufacturing of this. As I indicated already, we have entities producing tuk-tuks in Nyahururu, and we expect to expand on that. And also manufacturing of what I would say sort of hygiene durables. What has happened is that small and medium-sized businesses have innovated quite substantially. So if you look at washing stations for hand washing, so now you have touchless or contactless hand washing stations. And when you think about public health and public hygiene, the market for this will continue. We have a Lyquipia company that has put together a combined touchless thermometer and sanitizer dispenser, so that when you approach this gadget, it takes your temperature reading, but it also dispenses, sanitizer liquid. So it's quite a fantastic thing. So I see myself a post-COVID opportunity, a big post-COVID opportunity in manufacturing of the things that we've had to manufacture on the hurry up because of COVID, but also because then it brings, cost savings. Just to give you, if you look at the morbidity data now, what are we getting sick from? What you will see is that many of the things that require better hygiene, those diseases, whether it's diarrhea, common colds, all these kinds of things are way down. And I expect to realize significant savings on the cost side, because then people are not getting sick from these things, which means we should invest more so that every school has, and not one, but many hand washing stations, every marketplace, and so on and so on. And I think that this provides us with a very, very good opportunity indeed. Domestic tourism, and I think certainly for Lyquipia, the idea of Twende Lyquipia redefining the various circuits for Kenyans to come and visit, and so on. And as I conclude, to take advantage of these opportunities, what my government is doing is to scale up the programmatic enterprise development that I spoke to. So we would expect in the course of the year to double, or maybe more than double, the number of SMEs that we are working with. And in terms of direct support, I think you will have seen in the media that we've mobilized just a little over 3.3 billion shillings, working with Kenyan banks to support working capital requirements and so on. And I think I better leave it there. Come back during the discussion. Thank you, Crispin.
Thank you, Governor Nderitu. Thank you for sharing your great understanding of the opportunities of Laikipia County, and particularly the kind of vision you've shared of the kind of things you are doing in Laikipia. I think we'll be able to really pick up a few issues here and there during the interactive session. Really know why tuk-tuks session. So we found it very exciting, but we will pick it up shortly in the interactive session. Now, with that comment, we are honored to invite High Excellency Honorable Charity Ngilu to make her comments. Governor, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to this afternoon virtual meeting. Sorry I didn't join you a little earlier. I want to really say I'm sorry, and once again thank the Strathmore Business School for having me in joining this webinar. The questions that before us, and since I was not with you a little earlier, I just listened to the final part of what Governor Murithi was saying. I realized that a lot of counties have done so well that we must have meetings such as this one so that we can share and see what others are doing so that we can also pull up. But first and foremost, looking at where we are today in this country, it is obvious and it's clear that counties now need to realize, all of us, that we have got to make ourselves source of production for this country and source of wealth creation, because failure to do so, knowing that for the last 3 months now we have not gotten the much weighted resources that we get from the national government, it's obvious that if we do not do something ourselves, we are looking at a very, very gloomy times for our counties. Here in Kitui, we, from our manifesto, we had envisaged that we are going to deal with 5 important issues that we had identified, and we had thought first and foremost as to deal with the food and water. Then we said we would deal with healthcare and deal with the education and youth skills development. And number 4, women empowerment and the wealth creation. And we have everything that go really with the development in this county, because if it was an enterprise, Kitui was an enterprise, and we were looking at the available resources that we have here, that includes land, labor, skilled and unskilled labor, looking at our youth, if we're looking at technology, because we can buy technology and the capital, then we have that. And this also goes on to say, even at the national level, we need to look at all these things that this country have. And even though we have remained in poverty for a long time, and I keep on saying that even within the 4 factors of production that we have in this country and in the African continent, there is one other factor that we never quite bring into production and seeing real success, and that is leadership. And where you see real enterprises that have grown, they have very strong, well-visioned CEOs or MDs or general managers. And I think in the counties where right now we get so much money, that money need to be put in a way that it can actually help people get out of the problems and the suffering that we are seeing through. We are seeing them go through, including high level of employment. So in the count, we said, since we are endowed with everything that go with development, we're going to first and foremost use people themselves, young people. And in this Kitui County, from last year's census, we have 1,134,000 people. That 15 to 35 of these people, which make 376,000, are young people who quite never went beyond Form 4, and therefore, even if we want to employ them in offices, we find that they will not get jobs. So we decided we'll use this as our actually opportunity and resource to train them. This is why we in the county, we decided to come up with the garment production as one of the things that we needed to do. And we took this, we took about 700 young people who are now fully trained in making garments. And if you can see behind me, these are some of the things that we are making here in Kitui County. Among other things, we are also fortunate that we are also the ones that have been given the tender to produce, to make the administration uniform, including administration police and the DCs and the chiefs in the country. So we are happy that we are doing this in Kikotech, among other many other products that are making in Kikotech, including, and this is something that I would like to share with our governors, that we can actually look at the market that continues to bring into our county so many things that we can actually ourselves make, because something like mosquito net that we are now making, every year this country is using about 10 million mosquito nets that we buy, and people are buying, and the different organizations are buying for us. So I looked at what is it that we can do to ensure that we can actually create employment for people. And therefore we went for this textile, making. And we are also connecting this with the Rivertex that is also now producing local materials. This has helped us a lot, and the plan that we have in this county, and I call this now a strategic initiative, which we are implementing, and therefore it is competitive advantage that we can share with other counties. We also now going to open another Kikotech in Mwingi and another Kikotech in Mutomo. Our number will increase to about 1,600 young people who we are going to employ in this place. We also looked at other advantages that we have in this county. I didn't realize that we have got so much stone, and all along that we have been doing our roads, our buildings, we have been going elsewhere to look for construction materials until we got a few machines in and we trained our young people. Now I can say proudly that all the monies that we are using for doing our roads, we use materials made by our young people. We have also here trained another 500 young people who are now making our cabro, our fencing materials, our road construction materials, including brick making and machine cut blocks that are being used here. We have gone on since the COVID, and we saw an opportunity, a great opportunity indeed. If you can look at behind me, I don't know whether you see me, other than the things that we are making, we are also making materials, pharmaceutical materials, and we have gotten our CABE certification that we can make now hand sanitizers. We can make all the antiseptics. We are making 8 products. And the national government has come up with something that we all need to look at, because this now 334 products can be made in our own. I don't know whether any of us have seen this, but I saw it last week, and a week ago I saw it, and I have it now. And we have 334 products that we can make from within our counties and where the market is ready and available. And I've taken that seriously. The thing that I've got to do right now is to develop capacity of our young people here who can continue to do this, because the market is there. I can create employment. I can also make money for the county. In agriculture, we are making our honey, and the honey has many, many other byproducts of honey, including, shampoos, etc. That we are doing. Green grams, we want to add value to it. We're saying that we will not be selling our green grams, because that's something that Kitui can produce without much problem with the rains that we get. Again, that is something that we are doing. I have talked about how we are making our construction materials, because we combine this with the stone that we have in this county. And to do that, we got our ballast crusher, which has reduced greatly our infrastructure cost within the county and where we are employing people. Interestingly, another thing that we just saw for this county is the snakes that we have in this county. We have established a reptile park, and talking to the National Museums of Kenya, they are very excited. They say, we are coming in. And I'm also asking them to help us with researchers so that we can start extracting the venom. Then it can be used, because this is an area which has many, many snakes. And in the next 15 days, we are going to have a show here in Kitui, and I want to invite all of you listening to me to come and see some of the things that we are doing here. So and I just say this because all of you know Dr. Richard Leakey and the snakes, and therefore how much does he make and people coming to see what is happening. So, and we connect this with that comparative advantage of the road that we have that is now connecting Mombasa, Kibwezi, Kitui, which is so very good, and our Savo East Park, and then the Snake Reptile Park. And we are looking at times when we can now look outside from the normal everyday things that we have been able to do, and creating more wealth. After all, I was just also looking at what do we see in Rwanda? Rwanda, the only thing that they sell to the world is the gorilla. How about if Kitui was to sell only our snacks and to show them the different types of snacks? So these are some of the things that I want to say that they are doable. We can, make money, and the money that we get in every county. Just listening to the last bit of Governor Murid, he says, if you look at the region, like I also look at this region with my 12 billion shillings a year, with the Machakos 15 billion, with Makueni, and we are homogeneous ourselves here. What is it that we cannot do to retain this number of, this amount of money to the number of people that we have here? Because our population within these 3 counties is just below 5 million. With just close to 50 billion every year that we get. Isn't it time that we started looking inwardly of what we can do amongst ourselves? What therefore are the comparative advantages that we have here in Kitui? First, I say is the wide range of natural resources that are yet to be exploited, human resource included, agricultural products, minerals, land, and capital that we have. We are very well positioned, strategic positioning as Kitui, because now we are between Mombasa, Makueni in the east, we have Nairobi, we have Garissa, we have Tana River, and the road is now being made and done very well. So this is something that I personally think, as I put up another place called Nyong'o, where I'm putting youth to produce all these materials so that the northern, these counties of Garissa, Mandera, Wajir can buy products from within here because the road is good, the road network is good. Then utilize technology and add value to all these resources that I'm talking about. We need to build capacity. Our human resource requires capacity. Train them properly in areas of productivity and help ourselves to remove our mindset and attitude and mentality of poverty, that we are looking up all the time to see what can we be given. I'm looking at a situation where Kitui will be saying, how can we give other people, because we can get into serious production in this county. So, our starting all these products that we are doing here, all these programs and projects that we are doing here, really is to ensure that we can get our young people employment, they can produce. I personally feel that we have the market. Every time I look at our Kenya Economic Survey, year in, year out, Kenya Economic Survey 2020, if you look at it, you just wonder what we as a country, as a county, as counties are doing, because you look at everything that is being imported in this country and you say, what is wrong with us, including in agriculture, honestly. That when I was talking to Governor Kimeme the other day, he tells me, although it's producing so much potato in this country is coming from Egypt. Surely, Egypt is getting water to produce potatoes and to bring it back to Kenya, and the water comes from Kenya, Uganda, and within the Ethiopian highlands. Something doesn't seem to be going well with us. The pharmaceutical products that we are producing right here, we all have our pharmacists, but our pharmacists who are now producing all these products for this county have all been with us, but we have turned our pharmacists into shopkeepers just to expense drugs. That's all they are doing, but they can produce so that we stop some of these imports. Those are the things that I am trying to talk about. We have also gone on to bring Carlos. I'm just about to finish. Carlos. Yes. Carlos is helping us also now to produce silk here in Kitui. And we have gotten all this certification. The key challenges that we are facing, for me, One is to get fully trained people, knowledgeable people, and for people to understand the paradigm shift that we need to move away from always asking and thinking that we cannot do it. Opportunities that are rising out of the post-COVID-19 pandemic, I think we all have gotten great, for me, I think we have gotten great opportunities arising out of this, because I've been able now to train more young people, making all these masks, making these antiseptics, making PPEs, and we are able to go on and on and on with the things that we are making. And I want to once again thank you for inviting me to be part of this meeting. Asante sana, everybody.
Thank you very much, Governor Ngilu. Thank you for the very exciting initiatives that you've shared with us. I'm sure we will find some opportunity in the coming minutes to share a little more about what you are doing in Kitui, but it's very exciting. Thank you very much. We are really honored that you took the time to make a presentation at short notice. We were actually having a chat on Monday, and you've done an excellent job. Thank you very much. Now, with that first part of our presentations from the governors completed, I would like to invite the discussants. I'll give 10 minutes each to the discussants to make some comments, following which we will be able to have now an interactive session. So I'll begin with Dr. Jane Kiringai, the Chair of the Commission for Revenue Allocation. Daktari, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Crispin. And I want to join the governors in just thanking the Strathmore Business School for having us this afternoon. I think it's very exciting listening to the governors. And Governor Giru, I'll probably make Kitui my second home. But when you talk of snakes, I get frightened. But you seem to be doing very exciting things. We look forward to coming out there to showcase it all. Yeah. When Crispin, you approached me, you requested that I focus a bit on the resourcing part of devolution, and that's what I'm going to look at. But I'm going to put it in the context of what the governors have already talked about. I did hear what the governors talk about the funding constraint, particularly even when the money has been allocated to counties. The disbursements really take time. And you think about this, is a good example where very little money has already been disbursed to counties. And the question is, as you're waiting for money from the center, what do you do? What are the alternative or innovative financing approaches, which again, Governor Dirito talked about? So I came up with like 5 key factors that I would put in the context of that discussion this afternoon. And I'm referring to the wage bill effect in the context of competitiveness, because then it takes a lot of the fiscal headroom from the resources that county get. I talk about the development approach or the development paradigm, and we've listened to other governors and the way they're approaching development and where they are putting their priorities. And I also have as a point number 3, I think there has to be a genuine commitment not to leave anyone behind in the development agenda. And with regard to the financing and wage bill effect, I'm talking about counties' OSR, own source revenue mobilization efforts. I think this is very, very important in terms of looking within for their own resources. And finally, I want to talk about the urban agenda and its place in competitiveness. I had a small presentation which I gave to Joyce to stream, but I don't know if it's there, but if it's not a problem. Just to put the numbers into context. So for the last 7 years of devolution, about 1.9 trillion shillings has been disbursed to counties. 1.9 trillion shillings is not little money if you think about it. But when you look at the composition of spending in the 3 big buckets, that 1.9 trillion, 870 billion has gone to wages over the last 7 years. So 870 billion has gone to wages. Another 531 billion shillings has gone to operations and maintenance, and the development bucket has so far got 557 billion. So in essence, you can see that a huge chunk of this money introduced a lot of rigidities in what the governors can do in terms of investment. Because if it's 870 billion is money they can't move around, it's already locked in because wage bill becomes a fast charge. And looking more closely at counties, I can give examples in terms of that 570 billion, how much a county is putting, how are different counties structured. And I can tell you, a county like Taita Taveta allocates 55% of its entire equitable share to paying wages. You can compare that with a county like Mandela, which only allocates about 21% to the wage bill. So you can see, much as the governor of Taita Taveta has this equitable share, he has very limited fiscal room or degrees of freedom in terms of how much is left to invest. So that's going to be a big factor going forward in terms of how counties can invest to catalyze competitiveness. And again, this is not a decision for the counties alone, because part of this they inherited, and there has not been any national level policy to either say we're going to put a certain pot of money to send people home, or how do we really create more fiscal headroom when you're already locked in this wage bill bucket. Then we've looked again, and we've worked a lot with counties on asking how much more then can counties generate internally. And we have seen that some counties have been able to grow their own source revenue exponentially. A county like Ebu, for example, has increased their own source revenue 200-fold since the onset of devolution. But on the extreme side, we are seeing counties like Homa Bay, which actually are correcting below the pre-devolution levels. Nairobi City itself has not actually made any improvements in their own source revenue enhancement. And looking again at the potential, there was a study that was done that showed that if Nairobi, without really putting a lot of effort, without even changing the rates, but adopting innovative approaches, say to rating, now Nairobi could correct 70 billion in their own OSR. You can imagine how much that would do in terms of the fiscal space Nairobi has for creating the investments that would be required to make this the business hub for the country that it is. So these are some of the areas that counties will need to look into, because we know going forward, when the economic situation is sort of headed south, when we're in a bear run like we are now, disbursements from the center are going to really be more constrained. So counties have to look also within and see how they can still ensure that the entire development agenda is not coming to a halt when the treasury is actually constrained to ensure they have smooth disbursements. Let me go to the second or the third agenda, which I'm calling the urban agenda. And let me start by quoting one urbanite, who is my namesake, Jane Jacobs. And what Jane Jacobs says is that at a metropolitan economy, if it's working well, it is constantly transforming many poor people into middle-class people. It is making transforming many illiterates into skilled people, and many greenhorns into competent citizens. And she concludes and says that cities do not lure the middle class, they create it. And so I think there's got to be a place for urban development in every governor's development agenda, because cities are the centers of growth. Globally, everywhere, a lot of productivity is, or whatever, the economies of scale and everything are achieved at the city level. Let me give an example. New York City occupies about 1% area in the USA, but New York City produces a total of 8% of GDP. So economies of scale and concentration, where all it becomes a manufacturing hub. So I think one of the areas that governors also need to focus in is just making sure they have sustainable cities and cities that attract the private capital and then can connect very well with the rural areas. Governor Dirito talked about agriculture. Governor Giru also talked about the kind of things they're doing in the rural areas, but opening up the urban centers where now private capital can come in and locate and begin to be the centers and hubs of growth is going to be important. There's a risk then when all the money is taken to the rural areas and we see very little investments in the urban areas. And that in some cases we observe that, and particularly in Nairobi. And to maybe make this point, Governor Giru also talked about the Southeastern Economic Bloc, where we have Kitui, Makueni, and Machakos. To just demonstrate the impact of the metropolis, these three counties contribute 6% of Kenya's GDP. 98% of that is generated by Machakos County. Makueni contributes 1.1% of the entire block GDP, and Kitui is 0.3%. But I'm sure with the kind of initiatives Governor Ngilo is putting in place, you're going to see that changing. So getting or becoming part of a large metropolis and investing in the urban areas is going to be important. So in whatever development paradigm these governors are investing in, it's going to be important that you also have a place in your urban agenda. So, and looking at, in the slide that I've seen a lot of investments, for example, in stadiums. And I also did hear Governor Nyong'o talk about stadium. But I think even as we develop stadiums that sit in our urban areas, it's going to be so critical that we look beyond the cities and have a very, very genuine commitment to carry everyone along. When we go out, I remember we visited one area in Baringo. I had that in my slide. I wanted to show one of the radios that we came across. And she said, yes, you've listened to everyone. They tell you their priority is health, water, and education. And she looked at us and said, even if you put for me a health facility here, how do I get money in my pocket? So it's going to be so important that even as we like the kind of programs where we cut the ribbon and kiss the girl and get a bunch of flowers, it's going to be so important that there are investments also in livelihoods so that even those who have no education are carried along in the boat. And I think Governor Giru gave us very good examples about the kind of initiatives she's doing in Kikotech. But that's going to be so critical, although it doesn't give you maybe it doesn't give you as much mileage as launching a tarmac road. But getting into interventions where even those who don't have skills to offer in the market are actually carried along in the economic development agenda is going to be very, very important. So that's it from me for now. I look forward to the discussions and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Jane, for being just on the spot, 10 minutes on the spot. Thank you very much. And for sharing, I mean, what you've shared is excellent in terms of the comparative sort of a comparative analysis in terms of the figures, what counties are making and what counties are the resources they are getting, where those resources are going, and so on and so forth. But we'll be able to have a discussion around that in terms of funding counties and resourcing counties, the kind of physical room they have in our next discussion. Now, finally, let's have Dr. Ndei to make his presentation before we have the interactive session. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm delighted to see many old friends, actually, across the whole screen. So I will say hi to all of you who we haven't seen each other quite a bit because of avoiding COVID, but good to see you on screen. Again, let me compliment Strathmore Business School for organizing this forum. As you can already hear, it really gives us a lot of what's going on the ground. What, as Kenyans now say, you know, the ground is actually quite different from what is you hear up here. There are also actually very positive things, very encouraging things you're hearing on the ground. And I think as I was listening to the governors, I was thinking, I cannot possibly think of a better case for strengthening devolution than what I'm hearing, really. It really speaks for itself. I'm thinking if these countries had double the resources to double the things they are doing, really as this country, we don't really need to worry anymore about dealing with issues of poverty and unemployment. If the countries could scale up what they're already talking about, what they're doing. I'm going to talk about competitiveness analysis as opposed to competitiveness itself. I think that's where I can probably add a bit of value. And it's going to be very much informed by some of the work that Derito was referring to, that we've done for Lyquipia, with him in Lyquipia, on exactly that. I think one day Derito just called me up and said, look, I have all of these people, they are saying we should put this money here, we should put this money there. And the question is, what are we really competitive in? Where should we put the money? So I think the value of competitiveness analysis for you as a governor, for a governor and for government is, first of all, getting buy-in of the people. Because everybody thinks that what they are doing is the most important thing. So for you to tell them that it's not the priority, that's a political problem. So you need evidence-based sort of enterprise development, and for it to be evidence-based, then you need competitive analysis. And the second thing is, of course, to allocate resources, because resources are very scarce, so that you can put them in the right place. So you just got a bit of flavor of how that pans out. Now, there are three broad competitiveness drivers. You can either be cost or price competitive. You can be value competitive, you give better value than all your competition. And productivity, you can have higher productivity than other people, which then enables you actually to be price competitive. They are related, but not the same thing. Of these, the foundation is productivity. So I will focus primarily on productivity and show why it is the most important for counties to think about. Because if you think about, you can arrive at cost competitiveness by cheap labor, by very low wages, sweatshop wages, by exploiting workers. Obviously, that's not what we want. So we don't want the kind of competitiveness which you hear comes from very bad labor practices and child labor and things like that. Value competitiveness is important, but it can also be important. I just say what it is. If you think about something like tourism, for instance, I have had already a couple of mentions of experiential value things that you are even able to charge a premium for. Masai Mara, Narok has always been able to charge a premium for the Mara because of experiential value. You think about the Swiss are still selling mechanical watches, even if nobody needs them anymore. And they sell them for a hell of a lot of money. So there's value competitiveness. But the most important thing is, I think what we need to talk about is to think about competitiveness in terms of productivity. Why? Now, I'll give an example of a country. If you think about the product in Kenya that we are most competitive in the global economy, and I think that's tea, because we are the world's leading exporter of black tea, it so happens that we also have the highest yield per acre of all tea producers. Our yield per acre is about 4,500 kg. Sri Lanka comes close at about maybe about 4,300. Down to like our neighbors who are 2,500 kg per acre. And China even is only about 1,400. So the reason why we are very competitiveness in tea is because we produce the highest, we have the most productive. But we also manage to be productive and also produce high quality. And that has something to do with the nature of tea and tea husbandry and what smallholders are able to do in that sector. And therefore produce a high quality, and they're highly productive. So Kenya doesn't have to worry about people dumping tea in Kenya. You can't dump tea in Kenya. We can even remove and leave the market completely open, because we are very competitive, because we have very high productivity compared to none of the other competitors can actually sell tea here competitively. Yeah. Now, if you think about the opposite, the crop for which we are least competitive is sugar. That's why we have a huge sugar dumping problems. Why? Even if you look within COMESA, where we have fairly good sugar producers, we have the lowest productivity. If you look at Sudan, Egypt, sort of, they are doing something like 40 tons per acre or per hectare of cane. Even Mauritius is about 35 tons. Malawi, I know, is about 38 tons. We are 25 tons per hectare. I think it's per acre, 25 tons. And not only that, we have lower sugar content in our cane. And not only that, it is slow maturing. So it takes longer to mature and you get less. So it doesn't surprise that no matter how much we protect our sugar, we can't compete, even in our own domestic market, that we keep seeking COMESA extensions for protection. So that's the connection. High productivity, you get competitiveness. Low productivity, you don't get, you are uncompetitiveness. So the thing that I think counties need to do, and I give an example of agriculture. I'm going to then come to the non-agricultural economy. I'm going to talk about agriculture economy because it really speaks to all of us. It's very intuitive, and then talk a bit about the non-agriculture economy. So obviously one of the things you're going to ask is look at what people are already doing and ask themselves, what is our level of productivity in this product? Yeah, are we competitive? If you just check your productivity and benchmark productivity, if you're producing potatoes, what's our yield per acre? What is the potential yield per acre? That in itself, the yield gap between potential and actual, then begins to tell you where some of your most low-hanging fruit for competitiveness interventions already are. Okay, now, it is not just benchmarking with potential or with outside competitors. If you look within your own, within county, the productivity differential between farmers in one county is usually huge. You see, the better off farmers, if you think about dairy, you've got some better for farmers in the same county, the same locality, some who are doing maybe 20 kg of milk per day per cow. And then you've got others who are doing 2 or 3 kg per day per cow. And they are all dairy farmers. In fact, when you look at our smallholder farmers in dairy, for instance, the range between the highest sort of quintile and the lowest quintile is like 8-fold. So you're saying, what would it take to move the ones at the bottom just to the middle? And in fact, if you just move the ones at the bottom to the middle, the amount of growth that you can generate by raising productivity there is extremely huge. There is also the question of productivity across products in terms of use of resources. For instance, when we did Lyquipia, and we're able to compare different products, so you have to compare by value other than by volume, we found that agricultural productivity in terms of value ranged from 170,000 shillings per hectare for flowers on average, or rather, let me start at the bottom, from something like 23,000 shillings per hectare for sorghum to 170,000 shillings per acre for flowers. So why are you putting an acre of land to only give you 23,000 shillings? Well, the opportunity cost is 170,000 shillings. Obviously for flowers, there's a fairly obvious reason, capital. Flowers require a lot of capital, but and expertise and all kind of thing. But you still find like Lyquipia, when you're doing this sort of analysis, had 42,000 acres of maize, which gives you 25,000 shillings per hectare. While fruits give you 102,000 shillings per hectare, and they only have 500 hectares under fruits. So you begin to ask, why can't you take more land from maize and put it into fruits? Already, and I think when you look at that, we then went to look at different types of fruits, and we found, for instance, there is, sort of a question of you have to something about market. Can you get a market? But for instance, the value pineapples in Lyquipia, where there's quite a bit of farmers doing pineapples, 180,000 shillings per hectare. And that's not difficult to grow. So you begin to ask, is it possible to begin to shift some of the land that is in low value crops to high value crops, especially things like fruits, which also have value, much more value added potential. So those are some of the things. Then you begin to ask, what does it require? You begin, obviously, if things require a lot of capital, you don't have it. So you want to begin to the things which require less capital, which your smallholder farmers can do. And there is, I mean, even within the crop mix in Lyquipia, you could see a lot of portfolio readjustment. But of course, you then have to ask, why do people growing low value crop or maize when they could grow high value crops? Of course, it's food security. Then you have to ask yourself, if people then stop growing maize for subsistence, is there a way that you can then be able to provide that they can be able to get maize? So that, because even if you tell people not to grow maize and they don't know where they're gonna get food, they're gonna grow maize. So you've also got to think about those sort of economics. They're gonna ask you, okay, what is it that you can get to get farmers to shift from low value crops to high value crops? And then that in itself, there's a huge, in the whole of Kenya, because especially countries with the rural counties out of agriculture, the productivity potential in agriculture of doing that kind of competitiveness analysis. And then you look at what kind of interventions you can do both intra product and across product lines is very, very, very big. Then let me conclude, talk a bit about non-agriculture. And here, most of the enterprise sector we have in the counties is small enterprises.
You have 2 minutes, David.
Yeah. That's it. That's what I want to conclude. Is MSMEs. Now, we don't have very good data within counties of MSME by sector, although you can do that. But if you look at the national, particularly what we call the micro enterprise survey type data, which is done by KNBS, the one thing that flies with, they've done these data analyzed by what they call as registered and formalized MSMEs and unregistered or what you might call really informal MSMEs. And if you look at the difference between them, it's huge. The operating surplus per worker of the registered MSMEs is about, when the last MSME survey was done, was about 600,000 shillings per worker per year, 50,000 per month, okay? That's about 2016, so it's bound to be wrong. For the unregistered MSMEs, it was only 40,000 shillings per year. Okay, so operating surplus, again, productivity, 600,000 shillings per worker vis-a-vis 40,000 shillings per worker. And that's why you really had data saying that, Governor Moridi saying that some of that is really disguised employment. And the reason why he was talking about the question, then you begin to ask, how do we then move more of our workers to the enterprises where you can increase the operating surplus per worker? And the challenges you have in the very informal enterprises, of course, that the probably challenge of capital, challenge of skills, challenge of property rights, which is a counter responsibility that if people, if you are demolishing people's business premises all the time, then obviously you cannot expect them to invest. And so there are issues of enabling environment. But again, you also need to understand you are more productive, more competitive SME sector and ask, what are they doing and what can you scale up by bringing more people in it, obviously without destroying the market for the successful businesses. Yeah, so again, there's a whole lot of competitive analysis that you need to do there to see which sectors have potential. Again, you need to do what's the market potential and what do you need to do to move more entrepreneurs and more workers up the sort of productivity chain. So that's just more or less a case study of doing a competitiveness analysis for the counties, for a county. And the data is there. I mean, it varies county to county, and it's not a very complex exercise, although it requires quite a bit of sort of nuanced skill. But that's sort of what I thought that my contribution to this conversation would be. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, David. And I think we have completed the first part of our presentation today, of the webinar today. We will move to the next part where our other moderator, Professor Mudida, will provide some highlights of the critical issues arising from this discussion. And then, of course, on that basis, we expect a very interactive session where there will be some discussion between the governors and the discussants, and even some of the participants have posted questions which we will highlight to the keynote speakers. Professor Mudida, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Crispin, and thank you very much to the outstanding panelists, to the three governors, and also to the two excellent discussants for the insightful comments that they made. And I think an overriding issue that comes out is that the whole rationale for devolution is ultimately about competitiveness. Okay, so one of the reasons we went into devolution is we saw this as a major way of enhancing overall national competitiveness through focusing on the counties, enabling them to develop their areas of comparative advantage, choose specific sectors where they could enhance productivity. So this is, we could say, probably one of the central questions of the whole discourse on devolution. How can we enhance competitiveness? And indeed, if we even look globally, we can say that one of the most important differences between countries that are economically prosperous and successful and those that are less successful has to do with the whole question of competitiveness. So it's a very central question. In terms of summing up what some of the key ideas were, the three governors focused, first of all, on some of the specific actions that they are taking to be able to enhance competitiveness in their counties. And some of the key issues that came across were, of course, leveraging on strategic location. So the three governors mentioned the critical issue of strategic location of their counties and how that could be leveraged to enhance their productivity. They talked about different natural resources that they were in these counties, and particularly focused on the question of value addition, how value addition could occur in that particular area. The issue of data came up because these days in public policy, we talk about evidence-based public policy. So ultimately, good public policies have to be based on data. The whole question of enabling environment also came up in several of the counties, where there were several specific actions taken to improve the business environment, to make the legislation simpler for businesses, and for businesses to undertake different formalities much more easily. A key theme also that came out among the strategic initiatives was also regional blocks. So all the different counties are seeking to leverage regional blocks, because regional blocks enable taking advantage of economies of scale, and then different counties in a regional block can also synergize when they think about issues of competitive advantage. So those are some of the cross-cutting issues that came across. Then, of course, specific sectors that were identified. There were common sectors across all of them, across all the three counties. Agriculture was very critical in all of them. Tourism as well is an area that each county believes that it can develop further, and it can take advantage of more opportunities in that particular area. Manufacturing is a sector that also came up, beginning at the level of SMEs, but then expanding into larger scale manufacturing. And a particular theme that came up also in the different counties was SME development, the importance of SME development. But again, focusing on the issue of competitiveness, and within that, productivity is a very central issue that came up. So then, in terms of challenges, different challenges were identified. Challenges relating to political issues, sometimes change in political cycles, questions of infrastructure. A critical challenge that was identified across all the counties was skills development. the importance of skill development in productivity. This came up. The need to meaningfully employ the youth and enhance their skills to make them more productive. This came out as a vital challenge and vital necessity among all the counties. Questions of financing and also the issue of developing and improving broader social indicators, for example, in health and education. So these were accompanying issues that the counties continue to still struggle with. A key theme, though, and something that was very inspiring in the presentations was that all the counties saw these challenges as opportunities. Okay, so they did not focus on the element of challenge alone. They saw this as an opportunity that could be leveraged and enhanced, and that's a very positive mindset. And indeed, when they talked about the opportunities of COVID-19, they elaborated this very, very well. We always say we should never waste a crisis. A crisis always presents opportunities. So they saw COVID-19, particularly as presenting opportunities for them to enhance sectors focused on value addition. Manufacturing came up very, very prominently, and tourism as sectors that could be really enhanced by as a result of the COVID-19 challenges and also opportunities that were created in those particular sectors. But what is interesting is that despite the many problems of COVID-19 in terms of loss of jobs, loss of incomes, deteriorating health indicators, all three governors emphasized the fact that COVID-19 and the new normal that COVID-19 is going to lead to could present enormous opportunities for them to leverage. Both discussants also made very interesting points. They built on the ideas developed by the governors, and they made very interesting points. Dr. Jane Kiringari emphasized the challenges of the huge wage bill in county budgets, and the fact that this was squeezing out the possibility of sufficient development expenditure. And so development expenditure was really struggling because of huge wage bills. She emphasized the importance of also counties developing increased own source revenue, and this tied very well with some of the opportunities that were discussed by the governors. She also emphasized the issue of urbanization, increased urbanization, and counties needing to rise to the challenge of dealing with urbanization, but also seeing urban areas as potentially being connected to rural areas. So the opportunity in connecting urban and rural areas as being a critical one. In that light, it's important to note that at the moment, Sub-Saharan Africa is the fastest urbanizing region of the world. So urbanization is here with us, and it's going to present both tremendous opportunities, but also it can present tremendous challenges if not leveraged properly. So those are the points raised by Dr. Jane Kiringai, as she commented. Dr. Ndi focused on the importance of competitive analysis for counties, doing this in a very structured and formal way. And he argued that sources of competitiveness could arise from cost, price, value competitiveness, and higher productivity. And he spent a lot of time emphasizing the aspect of higher productivity. He gave excellent examples by looking at the tea sector in Kenya as a very highly productive sector globally. So sometimes we also need to benchmark. We need to benchmark against other counties and in different areas. That's an important dimension of competitiveness. And talked about the challenges of sugar and the way we struggle with low competitiveness in sugar. And as a result of that, then Dr. Ndi emphasized the importance of moving, okay, from low productivity subsectors to higher productivity ones. Began with the example of agriculture. First of all, allocating land to grow higher productivity crops, but then also talked about non-agricultural sectors, focusing on the MSME sector and how this could how productivity could be enhanced there. I'd conclude by saying at the moment, Kenya is about to begin substantive negotiations with the United States in the US Kenya FTA. And this presents both enormous opportunities, but also could bring critical challenges. So that particular FTA that we're negotiating now emphasizes the importance of counties clearly identifying the areas of comparative advantage, identifying their defensive interests, sectors they're trying to nurture, but at the same time, also seeing what might offensive interests be, what opportunities could they take advantage of in the US market. So if we do a proper competitive analysis, we'll be able to benefit from these initiatives and also other initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area and so on, because ultimately, all these advantages are going to be realized at the county level. So this is very central to be able to do that. So that's an overview of the different points that were brought out. I don't know whether probably the governors might want to respond to the issues that were raised by the discussants, probably briefly, and they probably have some comments in respect of what the discussants raised. So I could probably start with Honorable, His Excellency Honorable Ndiritu, and see what comments he would have and what responses to the issues raised by the discussants.
Well, thank you. Look, I think if you put the two together, it gels quite neatly, because Dr. Kiringai is talking to the question of urbanization. And I spoke, and David also spoke to the point about, enterprise as the basis in which, or the vehicle which you could bring the basically underemployed into sort of productive circumstance. And the two go together. And for example, in the case of Lyquipia, that's why we have a program called Smart Town. So we are looking at the 3 big towns, but also another dozen or so market centers that we are enhancing in order to provide the possibility of this happening. So I think that the two really go quite hand in hand. And I think my only further comment, I think in the Q&A, I think is what Utero was asking, well, why isn't it happening perhaps a lot more nationally? The things that we are discussing, why are they not, if you will, what is happening at a national scale? And probably that's where the opportunity for Kenya is to be able to progress what we are talking about, not just at the county level, at the 3 counties that we are discussing, but as a national strategy. And that dovetails into what, Robert, you've just talked about in terms of our negotiations with the US. But I would hasten to add the Continental Free Trade Area, that by looking at deeper competitive analysis, we could identify the areas in which we are moving enterprises into, and our urbanizing spaces are the right place for that production. And that production would be not just for Kenyan markets, but for the continental markets and beyond. My final comment, for instance, just here in Nanyuki, where I'm speaking from today, we have an entity called Mureri Engineering, and they produce grain dryers. So when you harvest maize or any other grain, now they're exporting these dryers to Nigeria, to DRC, to Tanzania, proving, if proof were needed, that this is possible and practical. Thank you, Robert.
Okay, thanks a lot, Governor Nderitu, for those insightful comments. I don't know whether the other governors would also like to respond to some of the issues raised by the discussants. Yeah. Probably Excellency Honorable Charity Ngilu, if you'd like to comment on any issues raised by the discussants. And then we go to Governor Nyong'o after that.
Thank you very much. Just maybe even a question. From listening to what Dr. Jane has said, counties have received 1.9 trillion shillings in the last 7 years of devolution. 3/4 of this money has gone into wages, paying people. My asking question is, the question I would like to ask is, so we're getting money and we are paying people and we cannot show what they are then producing. Is it that we do not have capacity in our counties? Is it that we need therefore to change the way we are spending this money? Because then it means that the money that we are getting from the national basket is not helping to improve the lives of people, because if you go to most of the counties, you still find the things that we were supposed to deal with in devolution, the devolved functions of county governments is first and foremost to deal with issues of food, water, local roads, when the national government will deal with other roads, and you still find that services are not adequate. In other words, you will not feel where this money has gone to. So is there us to look inwardly and say, if we're getting this kind of money, it is disturbing that I cannot say within 7 years of more resources coming to this county, I'm able to raise the number of people I'm going to employ. I'm going to raise and make shorter the distances that people collect water, that I'm going to ensure that we can produce more. I want to ask the discussants, is there something that then we are not doing right that we need to do so that we reduce the wage bill, people get on to do something else, so that we can probably increase the amount of resources that the counties can get? That's the one thing I would like to ask. And the other one is what you talked about, free trade agreement with Americans. Looking at the moment, everything that is coming to our counties and to our country, are we going to open up so that we will never even be able to compete well with an American government and Americans who are so well developed if you compare what we can produce? And I say this because I saw it during this COVID. While we struggled to produce these PPEs and masks, they already brought so much from China that even before I could take hours to cabs and for them to say, this is good, they had already done and produced so much and brought to our country. Isn't that going to be another serious problem for us? And therefore, who is keeping the gates for us to see that we will not be further disadvantaged as a country and as counties?
Thanks a lot, Governor Ngilu, for those very insightful remarks and questions. Probably just going to Dr. Ndi, because the specific issue that was raised was addressed to you on what are the counties doing wrong and how can they address that? Okay,
Bob, shall we go to His Excellency
service
Nyong'o?
delivery challenges.
Bob, Prof.
Okay.
Shall we go to Professor Nyong'o? Yes, His Excellency Professor.
Yeah, I can go ahead.
Good
Go ahead, Prof. Nyong'o.
Can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes,
Good.
Yes, yes.
Can hear you. Can hear you very well.
I've been having challenges with this technology, I mean, Kisuma, Anyway, David, Thank you very much for seeing you and hearing from you. I think you made some, as usual, some very, very enlightening points that I think clarify our mind. But I want to make comments on two things. And I'm sorry, I'm going to be kind of agnostic about it. This issue of so-called wage bill is asked wrongly and answered wrongly. One, if you look at Schedule 4 of the Constitution, you'll find that the county governments are allocated functions a lot that have to do with service delivery, health, social service, ECD, social service, water, social service, access roads, social service. And who does these social services? Employees of the county. They must be paid wages. But what do you get from these social services? What you get is development of human resources, who will then go and work elsewhere, survive, do whatever. So we should not really just huge wage bills. They have to perform certain functions, which the national government is not performing. And these are many social services. If you look at industry and energy, I have a Department of Industry and Energy here. What can it do, really? Energy is mainly a national function, so are industries, really. So when you're talking about the wage bill being huge, the fact that it's huge doesn't mean that it's useless. It is huge because it's being used to do something, which is necessary for the development of society. Social service delivery is very important for development, education and health. How are you going to have good human resources if you don't invest in education and health? And while you're investing in education and health, you're not really getting something back immediately. So I really think that the data that Jane Karengai was giving us, it's not a data to regret that counties are not investing, raising a lot of money for development, because a lot of money is going to wage bill. Yes, we received a lot of unproductive labor from the former municipal council, and I will tell you, cities like Kisuma or Kakamega or Mombasa or Nairobi received a hell lot of them. And these guys are zero productivity, if you ask me. Now, to get them away from government is difficult because permanent and pensionable. To do a suitability test for these guys, they will run rings around you. I've tried. So it will take some time before you get productive workers in the counties performing the function that they should perform. Now, let me give you another example. When the fiscal strategy paper stipulates that a ministry like health is allocated about 300 billion shillings, okay, per month, per year, 300 billion shillings. You go to Schedule 4. What is the Ministry of Health doing with the 300 billion shillings when health is a county functions? We got a poultry sum. And that poultry sum that we get comes grudgingly. You can hardly plan to spend it because you don't know when it is coming. We were chosen as a pilot country from for UHC. I should give you the report that I wrote. First of all, by the end of the year, when we were a pilot country, 25% of the money had not been given to us. So of course, the pilot, to me, was a failure, but it's a failure we learned from. So now we are trying to implement UHC in Kisuma County, not following that model of relying entirely from the national government. But I don't want to tell you what I'm doing to try and avoid that pitfall. So I am saying that we really should think very carefully on how, when we analyze this wage bill, have mourning that counties are spending too much money on wage bill. Of course, it is necessary. How else are you going to have community health workers if you don't pay them? Now, these are health workers who are doing extremely important work at the grassroots. They were very important during COVID. Homestays cannot be successful without community health workers. Now, if you call them community volunteers, and then you give them menial wages, of course, they're not going to be doing a very good job. So you have to invest in them and make sure that which they should be doing, homestays and so on, which are very critical to healthcare, are done. So I would like us to engage in a much more productive discussion of this wage bill than we are doing at the moment. The second thing I was going to say I think it's something that has been hinted at, and I think Robert Mudida knows about this, my view. But I think, David, in the 1980s, I was very excited about studying import substitution industrialization. And I wrote a paper that Coughlin and Kiara published in their book, Strategy of Industrialization in East Africa, or something to that effect. My argument was that, look, import substitution is not bad, really. We should not just throw it away because we can produce cheaper goods, and if we can't, let us import them. I think import substitution industrialization has some historical limits. It must be there for some time in history for us to build internal capacity to be competitive. How are people going to be competitive if they don't work things, if they don't produce things, if they don't learn how to do it cheaply? You're not going to begin climbing the tree from the top. And COVID has taught us very radically that if there's a shutdown in the whole world, the planes are not flying and all that, then you depend on your basic foods from Israel rather than from your garden, your little peasant garden at home. You are done. And we saw during COVID that this household economies become very important in supplying food to the county. So we have started a program in Kisuma County called Reinforcing the Household Economy, because we don't know when the next pandemic will come, which will be much more serious than COVID. But even then, even if you don't think of pandemics, it is necessary to have self-sufficiency in food production, because without food, you are dead. So we should do our best to have self-sufficiency in the food production. Farmers are not foolish. They know, of course, that growing maize per hectare by the method they're using, like David say, that's not lead to a very high productivity. But they want to make sure that the food is there when they need it. Now, during this shutdown, those of us who go abroad for healthcare, like I've done before, you found out that with all that money that you have, if everything is closed down, you are going nowhere with that money. You better build the capacity to treat your people here, however expensive it is. So I think that when we're advancing this argument, I think it's very important to realize that one of the reasons why devolution was established was a more efficient way of delivering self-services to our people, social services to our people. When I was a member of parliament for Kisuma Rural, I decided to build 12 dispensaries in my constituency. The Minister of Health was mad with me. They're saying, but where the hell are you going to get the nurses to work there? I say, we build the dispensaries according to World Health Organization principles, and the nurses will have to be brought. The nurses are now there, and people don't need to walk more than 3 kilometers to the dispensaries. During COVID, it became very important. So I really think that we need to be a little bit much more realistic when we are talking about these things, and just not make dogmatic statements that the way bill is big is bill, but it's for good reasons. Bill is big, but there's some people who are unproductive we should get rid of. We should get rid of them, but it takes time. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. And you're right. When I was a young student of economics, I read your work on import substitution and industrialization with great interest, and it was very informative then, as it continues to be now.
Thank you.
Now, Nyong'o has raised issues for both discussants about vital services, and probably Dr. D could comment on the issue of reviving import substitution, but in a more constructive ways, and if Nyong'o is saying, learning from the mistakes of the past and our past experience in import substitution industrialization. And also maybe Dr. Ndi could comment on the Charity Ngilu, on what are the counties doing wrong in terms of service delivery and how can they enhance their competitiveness. So go ahead, Dr. Kiringai first, and then Dr. Ndi in responding to these issues raised by the governors.
Thank you. I thank the governors for throwing the ball back to us. And let me respond to Governor Nyong'o first. And I hear you, Governor, but I think the context, the wage bill context we're discussing today is in terms of efficiency in delivery of services. And the two, perhaps you missed parts of the discussion. I gave two examples. And the first example I said, a county like Turkana, like Mandela, for example, they didn't inherit workers. So for that reason, their wage bill is only 20% of their expenditure. A county like Nairobi, for example, receives 15 billion on equitable share, but spends 12 billion on the wage bill. And the question then is, how much is left for the county government of Nairobi, for example, to then invest in other Schedule 4 functions? If you think of county of Taita Taveta, which spends 55% of their equitable share on the wage bill, then how much do they have left for roads, which are an important catalyst for development? I think that that's the concept of the wage bill wanted to bring to bear. That, and number two, if you look at the equitable share to counties, it's going to be declining over time. It may seem to be increasing in nominal terms, but in real terms, this particular pot is contracting. So unless governors can look internally for alternative sources of financing, where are they going? Where are the efficiency gains going to come from? Where are you going to make sure that you're reaching the Kenyans who have previously been unreached from the center? So that in essence was not flagging the wage bill in a dogmatic manner. It's saying, if you have these people, if you have these workers in place and really no fiscal headroom, because then you can't send them home, but you must find funds or resources elsewhere to make sure that you're still delivering services in an efficient way. How then do we have that conversation? It's not saying that health workers should be sent home. No, that's not the issue. And I think you answered that in asking, if we have about, I think my figure is 97 billion, if 97 billion is still sitting at the center with the Ministry of Health, how do we then make sure that part of this 97 billion can actually be devolved to ensure that the institutions that hold the larger end of the stake actually get this money to provide the fiscal headroom that is much needed to make sure that development is happening at the local level. And I think this was the context, and I think Governor Gilu, you also alluded to this, to the issue of the wage bill. You asked, why is it that 870 billion has been used to pay workers and we are not seeing it? Probably in some areas you are, because if you have a doctor, if you have doctors and nurses, that in my view is human capital investment. Investment does not only have to be in hard top infrastructure, which is very easy to give. That is very easy to give, but the harder things to do that are those that you cannot touch. Making sure that a woman who is 45 years, who has not gone to school, still can get some income in her pocket. Even when she has no title to large, she has no skills to offer, she has nothing to bring to the marketplace. How then do you reach this woman who has not been reached in the past? And the point was, yes, you have these workers, but we must find the fiscal headroom somewhere else to reach those who are not yet reached.
Thank you, Jane, for that. You've explained that very well. I promised that at the beginning that I will try to make sure that we keep time. I think we have run out of time, and therefore I want to move to the concluding session. I will give each one of the guest speakers, including the discussants, 1 minute for a parting shot, and I'm still curious from Governor Nderitu why the tuk-tuks. So in your parting shot, please try to explain why the tuk-tuks. I found it very exciting, for instance, in addition to the very many exciting ideas Governor Ngilu was presented to us. But before you have 1 minute for your parting shot, I'd like George Jenga, our Dean, to make a comment. George, say something.
I think my intellectually endowed panelists have said everything. The only thing I'd like to remind our panelists, and especially our governors, is when we talked about regional county organization and economic value propositions. So for instance, like the 6 counties in the north, from Turkana all the way down to Lamu, there is an overall economic proposition for the whole country and the region. So how are you going to construct the piping if you think production of oil is a reasonable economic activity? The piping from Turkana to Kisuma, which has a significant amount of oil, but I don't know how much. I still don't have the statistics yet. How does it connect to the entire East African region? How does the transportation, blue economy transportation connect the whole region and also becomes a support for people like Congo and that region? So the African Continental Free Trade Area, this is a very crucial issue. Now, from Africa Continental Free Trade Area, you have also to think that we have to play a value chain economic analysis for the production of certain things globally. So for instance, you have the whole avocado value chain, all right? This is a clear proposition to the country. Now, how much can you play in that? You know that the avocado production is about consumption is in the region of 5 billion tons of avocado. So how do we play in that 5 billion global consumption? Because we have very good avocado production, fish production like tilapia, and so on from a global perspective. So probably one of the things that we should really think about is how are our counties playing in the global economy? Now, frankly speaking, to summarize, I know we have big problems. I know we have a lot of poverty. I know we have skills gaps. I know we don't do adequate value chain the way Ndee has been speaking. And if you don't do value chain, you don't know exactly how much productivity you're worth. And I stop there because you need to think broader together rather than my county. The final thing I'd like to say, ladies and gentlemen, is that if we do not identify the value chain and train the skills specifically in that productive area we think is crucial for the development of the county and for the entire community of Kenya and then Africa, then we will never be productive, all right? Now, it doesn't mean a university has to be set up. Probably the most important thing is what I had Governor Derito saying there, which is the value chain, which are the machines, avail them and train the people on the job and quickly, because that way we can increase wealth in the hands of Kenyans, which is very needed now in case we have crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Governor Nderitu, your parting shot, please.
Well, tuk-tuk, because we import around about nearly 200,000 motorcycles and about 4,000 tuk-tuks per year. Tuk-tuk, because our tuk-tuk is 4 wheels, so it's far more stable, better engineered than the noisy contraptions we import from the East. Tuk-tuk, because it is affordable, it is made for the rugged, Lyquipia, Nyandarua, Kitui kind of terrain. Tuk-tuk, because it's 450,000. Our farmers can be able to afford this vehicle that can carry about 3/4 of a ton. And finally, tuk-tuk, because once we are able to persuade Governor Ngilu to give us the coal that she has, we will combine it with the iron ore that is in all these parts of Lyquipia North, make our own steel, and therefore be quite industrialized. Thank you, Crispin.
Thank you very much. Governor Ngilu, your parting shot, please.
Thank you so much once again. everybody who has been a discussant and the panelist, and thank you again for inviting us. I just want to say that devolution was supposed and was meant to spur fast economic growth for this country, 47 counties. What is happening right now, we may say we are still in the process of understanding what can be done, albeit a little bit too slow. However, with the good knowledge that we can get from universities such as Strathmore and other universities, honestly, we can get our people just to understand what they need to do. And our appreciating that our strength lies in the opportunities that we have from the many young people who I personally see as a resource that we can use well by ensuring that we can develop skills in them and make sure that, as she said, we have the equipment, the machines, and train them and make sure that there is market for what they produce. We as a country must look at maybe the Big Four agenda and especially the one on manufacturing, because these young people can do work, manufacture, get jobs, get this country out of poverty. But we now have got to ensure that there's market for what we produce within ourselves and ensure that as many of these things that are coming from outside this country do not continue coming in, because obviously if you're going to compete, anything that is made in Kitui, maybe in Nairobi, Kariobangi, and Dadora will not be as the same quality as something that will be coming from Europe, America, and China. So we need to start doing what we have got to do. When I see here in Kitui, just as I conclude, that we are now able to make even beds that we always had to buy from China, that were coming from China, we are now making mattresses, and very high quality mattresses. I really think that we have opportunities in this country that we have not exploited well to ensure that our young people and the women can get a sustainable livelihood. And we need to ensure that there's knowledge, developing of skills, equipment, and ensure that there's market. Thank you. I thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Governor Ngilu. Governor Nyong'o, your parting shot, please.
Thank you very much, Crispin. Let me thank Strathmore University for arranging this very interesting discussion for us. I've gained a lot, actually, taken a lot of notes. And I've learned one word, one word which I never knew from Jen: fiscal headroom. Fiscal headroom. Very good word, actually. And I think, Jen, this is a discussion we should have more. Yes, we some of us are trying to get that fiscal headroom by having opportunity to borrow from the capital markets or from banks. For example, you know, we had a big crisis recently with paying wages. We had to make arrangement with banks in this room to give us credit for a month without charging much after a lot of negotiations. But we also had to have a quid pro quo to say we shift some money to your bank in terms of what we're getting, so that you do business with us. It created some kind of fiscal headroom. But I think the biggest fiscal headroom we need to get is to implement what is in the Constitution. Resources follow functions. Indeed, if resources really followed functions, even at the moment in Schedule 4 of the Constitution, we'd get much more money in the health care department, in the health delivery department, so that paying the workers in health will not look as daunting in terms of percentage, because with more money, when you pay them, there will be some fiscal headroom. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. Any comment on that?
Well, thank you, Prof. I think that was the point. I think the point is well made. For me, on a light note, it's been my prayer, Governor Dirito, that the tuk-tuk would replace the mkokoteni in Nairobi. I think all of us know what it means to have a mkokoteni driving in front of you. and you're late to work. So if they could actually adopt the Lyquipia tuk-tuk and just use it as and take it, let it take over the mkokoteni in Nairobi, I think we'd have a more efficient city. And finally, I think for me, a final word from the governors, I think the COG is it's a very powerful lobby group. And I think after the first phase of devolution, it was very combatant, very controversial. I think going forward, it's gonna be so important that the negotiating table and the tone changes so that we can have, we can leverage what the latent potential that currently exists in the countries. Thank you very much. That way we get the fiscal headroom, the much needed fiscal headroom. Even if it is in form of conditional grants, Professor Nyong'o, it's going to be very, very important.
Thank you, Jane. David?
Yeah, thank you. Once again, thank you for organizing this. My parting shot is the following. You know, I'd like us to always remember that the economy begins and ends with people. We keep talking about the economy growing by 5, 6, 7, or 10% every year. When we talk about economic growth as economics, that's not what we mean. That is really output fluctuations. What we mean by economic growth is sustained increase in productivity. And the most important metric for measuring productivity is output per worker. Yeah. Now, so that if you see Singapore with a GDP of $50,000 per capita, that is very close to their productivity. It means that output per worker is something like $70,000 per worker. If our GDP per capita is about $2,000 per, it means that our output per worker is something like $2,500. So Singaporean, the reason why Singapore is richer than ours is because Singaporean workers are maybe something like 20, 30 times more productive. Now, our lowest hanging fruit in productivity is in the things people are already doing. Every worker in Kenya, in what they are doing, I believe it's possible to raise their productivity by 40%. Now, so let's look at go micro. As governors, you can go micro, which national government cannot do, and say if one farmer is getting 4,000 kilos per lactation per cow, why are most of my farmers getting 1,500 kilos? Yeah. Before I'm afraid as Africans, we inherited this idea that development is a form, looking like the other countries. So we think about big things. But really, development, I talk about economic growth, is incremental, is increasing the productivity of what is improving what people are already doing. And I believe within now in the next 2 years, it is possible for every county to increase the productivity of its workforce by 20%. If you just on the things that they are currently doing, before we get to the big things that we think that should make us look like Southeast Asia. So that's my parting shot.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you all for a very productive discussion. I'm happy we did not discuss wheelbarrows and other things like that. Now, with that comment, I'd like Angela Ndunge to close the session.
Crispin.
Yes.
Please, Crispin.
Yes,
sorry,
madam.
Crispin, I had asked about our FTA agreement,
Yes.
and I thought Dr. David did say something about it.
David, go ahead. Respond to that.
Let me just say very quickly, you know, if you look, there's a negotiating memorandum on the FTA. I think it's useful if you haven't seen it, you look at it. It's I think it's I got a copy from Betty Minor. The FTA we are negotiating with the US is really a post-AGOA agreement. And the only reason why we are negotiating with us, it's easier to negotiate with one country than with 15 or 20 countries. So, and that's very clear in the negotiating memorandum. So it's important for us it's not what we think it is. There is not free trade sort of agreement between Kenya and the US, which is going to be independent of our COMESA, EAC, and even Africa Continental sort of things agreement. So it's a bit misrepresented. Part of it is politics. But I think it would be useful to read the negotiating memorandum and realize that it's not really what many of us think it is.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Madam Ngilu. Angela, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Crispin. I'd like to take this opportunity just to quickly thank our panelists and our discussants for this fantastic afternoon. I think when we were conceptualizing this idea, we had no idea how amazing it would be. And I would really want to take the time to express my gratitude for making time to be with us. And I would also like to appreciate the moderators. Crispin has been at the forefront coordinating everybody, ensuring everyone is well prepared. He's part of our team in the Institute of the Public Policy and Governance in Strathmore University Business School, together with Professor Robert Mudida. So thank you very much. I'll also thank, of course, all the people who've been working in the background, the Strathmore team, of course, in the public sector unit, who have been ensuring that we have a smooth run of things. So I'm truly grateful to all of them. So as parting shot, I was wondering what else I could add to this conversation. And then I came across a quote from our very own Wangari Maathai, who said, "It is the little things that citizens do that will make the difference." And I'm really happy to have been part of this conversation, because those things that have been shared by the governors and the discussants who have been here may look like little things, but I think they are great things for this country, and they are showcasing what is really important in moving this country forward. And it was a pleasure to listen to that, because we don't get that opportunity to really know what is happening and some of these initiatives. So we are really happy. And from the Strathmore side, we can continue to reiterate that we are committed to be part of this catalyst of development and for inclusion and for wealth creation for our people. Because if we don't participate, if we are going to be producing knowledge, if we are going to be producing research, and we are not in touch with what is happening on the ground, then I don't think as academia we will be doing justice in the production of knowledge. So I see lots of opportunities for us to continue discussing the aspects that you have brought out. Strathmore, we have MSME Center that we had had running for about 5 years, that can be available to support these initiatives with research, with data. I heard there's a lot of data that is required. So I hope the governors here can also look to institutions of higher learning to support some of these decisions that they are making using the data. We also here to provide any capacity building in the area of policy, as well as area of competitiveness. So whatever support as an academic institution that we can provide, we are ready and capable, as we have always positioned ourselves as a university that is ready to serve society by developing great leaders. And where we are provided with that opportunity, we are always happy to come in. So thank you very much, and thank you everybody. I do hope that this is a beginning of a continuous conversation. We will be keen to hear from you if this is something we should do regularly and how often. We have Daniel Ochieng, who has been the contact person with Joyce Ryungu. Please get in touch if you have any other ideas on how we can continue these conversations. Please let us know, but we are very much keen to make sure we continue this positive conversations that will drive Kenya and Africa at large in a positive mode, in a positive way. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So participants, feel free to leave at your leisure.
Bye, everyone.
Panelists, the same. Those who wish to remain behind for a bit of a chit chat in the panelists, we can also remain behind just to do a debrief.
Thank you very much, and goodbye. Thank you for having us.
Only to ask Charity whether the snakes have anything to do with uchawi wa Kitui.
Professor, you come and see for yourself.
Okay.
But you'll be safe. Yeah. You'll be safe.
Wanangilu, we look forward to visiting you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm your neighbor there, so I might during Christmas holidays come to that park if it'll be open.
Please, you're very welcome.
Yes.